Holesaw pro tips. Can I really call myself a professional Holesaw user? Yeah, I guess. I've been using them for a couple decades, and when I first started using the things, I would jam them up and screw up things, and I'm kind of an artist now because a few decades have made me patient. So learn from my spotty history. It's a really clever device, a Holesaw. Essentially what it is this mandrel thing which connects to the drill chuck as any other drill bit would. And on it, it has a threaded place for you to insert a replaceable hole saw, so you can put all sorts of different sizes on. How it transfers its rotational torque from the mandrel thing to the hole saw itself is through these two shear pin things that thread down inside of it. It's a robust design. If you don't have something like this, you might want to consider buying one. I'm sure you can find a number of uses for them. Tighten it all the way down and then tighten the shear pins in, and they won't go in at first. Notice there's holes in there. You want to back it off just until it aligns with the holes and then tighten it all the way through. It won't be tight in most cases, but those are just shear pins. Easy one. Brush your teeth. Use something soft, either an old toothbrush or brass. Don't use steel, you don't want to dull it. If the teeth are clean, you'll make a smoother cut. Next up, hole cutting efficiency. This is probably the most important tip in this video, and it's not because I'm trying to get you to conserve material, it's more about effective hole cutting. In this case, we're trying to make circles, we're not making holes. Okay, just to be clear, a hole saw has two functions because there's an inside and an outside. Stick with me, I know it sounds obvious, but this is a hole and this is a circle. You might be doing either of these things. That is, you might be preserving this or you might be preserving this. They're different processes. If you'd like to maximize the amount of circles that you can get out of a piece of wood, then you have to use a very specific stacking pattern. And it is this, every other. You know this intuitively, but somehow you still try to squeeze one out and it ends up costing you material. But that's not the important tip here. The important part is right here. You want to get one hole so close to the next that it allows it to evacuate the dust. If you don't, if you're just close like this, you still have a little wall here, a barrier that prevents the off-cut sawdust from getting out, and it just jams up the hole saw and makes it go slower. If you can line it up in at least 2, but preferably 3 spots to let the dust come out, you will make hole saw cutting so much easier. And the way to nail perfect efficiency is to make a tool like this. It's just a piece of 1/4 inch rod and it's sharpened to a point here in the middle. You're going to take the size hole that you're making and make this. Now we can line it up relative to these other 2 holes perfectly, just leaving a little bit for error. And that's where our pilot goes. Next trick, I just showed it to you. Stop halfway. The reason that you stop halfway is so that you can flip over and finish from this side. Why do we stop halfway? Well, because this way the hole doesn't get jammed up inside of the hole saw, making it more difficult to get it out. The other reason is that it doesn't tear through the back side, making an ugly hole. Also, when we get to the last little bit, right when it's about to break through, you want to be super slow there. Why be super slow there? Well, not only do you get a cleaner donut, but it also removes all the material around the perimeter, and so it doesn't wedge as tight into the hole saw. It's about time. Little seconds. Shave off half of a second at a time in your workday. You don't want to play around digging this out with a screwdriver. It's just lost time.
This is a hole, and this is a circle. You might be doing either of these things. That is, you might be preserving this, or you might be preserving this. They're different processes.
If this is the piece that you're trying to preserve, but you need to get the sawdust to evacuate, then you would want to make your relief cuts within the hole. This might not sound all that important, but as the size of the hole increases, so does the amount of cutting that you're making, and so does the time that it takes to do it. So let's pretend we're using a thick material and a big hole saw. We want to make this hole, but the circle we don't care about. And so a spade bit hole that's just tangent to the inside of the circle hole makes a great way to make a relief cut. It will give the sawdust a place to go. It won't matter all the time, but if you're doing something really large, give it a shot. It might help save you a little bit of time. Whenever you're using a drill version, gently oscillate around the perimeter of the circle. Just real slowly. Nothing drastic. And frequently pull out and clean your teeth. As soon as you start to get buildup, you're going to generate friction, and you're going to trap heat, and you're going to slow your cut. And in any case where you can't come through from the other side and clean up your hole, go nice and slow through the end. The harder you press down, the worse the explosion's going to be on the back side. Beautiful cut, right up until the end. Slowing the feed rate at the end will help to mitigate damage, but a more surefire way to save your piece is to simply support the backside with something sacrificial. This works 100% of the time. For our next trick, we want a circle that doesn't have a pilot hole in the center. How can we do this? If we remove the pilot and just plunge into a piece of wood, well, there's no pilot, so the wood's going to go rattling around everywhere, and it's going to make a sloppy hole. But there's a way around it. First, let's remove the pilot. In order to pull this off, we're still going to need a pilot. It's just that rather than the pilot being in the center, the pilot's going to be outside the circle. So we take a scrap piece of plywood, center it in between. A clothespin like this is really handy. And try to make the hole at least 2/3, preferably 3/4 or more of the circle. This is just a weight. The more surface contact we make with our hole saw, the less error there will be. Okay, and that would be great if I were cutting a hole in this, but I don't want to do that. I want to cut a hole in this. So let me try that setup again. Put spacers underneath if you need to. Oh, I know. These are a pain. That's why people just end up cutting circles out on the bandsaw or something. But now you have your pilot. Another caveat for doing these is, unfortunately, you have to drill all the way through and you can't do half and half. Well, I messed that one up, but I'm not reshooting it because you get the idea. This is the method that you would use in order to do this, or something like it, but you know, use a bigger piece, not a scrap. Sometimes I use a little bit of white bar soap just to keep debris from building up, helps it to reduce friction. Of course, this is not essential. It's just one of those things where if you're doing lots and lots of holes, it helps you save a little bit of time. Those little pieces of a second add up over the course of a day. Watch how, when I'm inserting the pilot into the hole, the piece will vibrate, and then once I have it in and set, then I stop the piece from vibrating. So be flexible at first and kind of go with the error until it settles into its pilot hole. Then you grab it and hold it tight. Now, I heard somebody say, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Yeah, that makes sense. You know, don't go too quickly with this. You're increasing the feed rate and it just makes a tear out. It causes these to be ugly. If you want them nice and smooth, you go slow. Same thing when you're using a table saw or a miter saw. We still might want to get our holes smoother, nicer for finish work. In that case, make a jig for your drill with a coupler nut and, you know, set up a couple jam nuts here so that you can stick the number of holes that you want to work on at a time, probably 3 or 4 tops. When you do this, if you find that it's wobbling in rotation, the eccentricity might not be your all thread. It could be the coupler nut. These sometimes come out of the factory not aligned for that purpose. Coupler nuts are not machined to chuck level tolerances. So you might want to either get a different coupler nut if it's wobbly, or just rotate it so that the chuck teeth go to the other 3 faces. Worst case scenario, you could always try filing one of those faces, but I wouldn't go that far. Yes, I would. If you care about protecting the surface, use a washer, but you can just skip that altogether with a nut knob. If you watch this channel frequently, you probably have a drawer full of these. Also lets you skip the wrench. When there's no pilot on the inside of the hole saw, and we make a template to grab the hole saw from the outside and hold it fixed, effectively the pilot is on the outside. We can use some variation of this trick to do all sorts of things. Clamp this to what you want to drill anywhere you want. If the hole is screwed up and you want to drill a hole right next to an existing hole, you can do that. Because if you wanted to drill right here, there's no place to get a pilot anyways, so you could clamp something to what you want to drill. Another super popular trick is the old hole enlargement trick. If this hole I just drilled is too small, hole saw's nest, there should be enough threads there to get an additional hole saw in it. And now this will define where this larger hole saw cuts. Pretty easy and popular hole enlargement trick. Okay, one more pilot-free trick. Get yourself a circle, a cutout, and attach it to where you'd like to make a hole. You could screw it directly to what you're drilling, and then you can use the hole itself as a pilot. Why wouldn't you just use the pilot? I don't know. Because maybe you have a circular spot that you're trying to center on. I don't know. There are plenty of reasons why you might want to use a trick like this. The point is to have as many tricks in your tool bag as you can hold. Hole saw kits, hole saws in general, they're just one of those things that you don't think are important. And so it might be tough to pull the trigger on buying yourself a set. I understand. My advice is, well, since I'm a person who never bought a set of them, is to just, over the years, find a brand and a, whatever this is called, and then just buy the individual hole saws that you need for a job as the problem arises. You'll be surprised that over the course of a tinkerer's life, the years go by rather quickly, and pretty soon you've amassed a set without having to make that hard investment. But as always, be on the lookout for used things and, discarded things and estate things. And don't go out and buy new tools. Go find used ones. It's amazing what's out there because people don't know what they have, and they have a hard time differentiating between quality, plain-looking tools and fancy pants, new, brightly colored tools. Tools are a means, not an end in and of themselves, and so there's nothing wrong with using a modest set of tools as long as it's functional and safe. If you don't yet own Holesaws or use them, you're really missing out. They have a spectacular array of uses. You would be surprised, especially when used in combination with a drill press, which you should also have. It's one of those things where, much like a shovel, you aren't a man until you own one. To summarize this video in a couple seconds, learn when to slow down the feed rate of your hole saw. Go from both sides whenever possible. Evacuate as much sawdust as is possible. And try to keep your hole saw clean. If you can do those things, you will reduce friction and increase your hole saw efficiency. And the proof will be in the pudding when you don't have to waste time prying the circle out of the hole saw with a screwdriver. Hope this helps you.